The moving truck hadn't even reached the end of the driveway before a father and his little daughter were standing on the sidewalk with nothing but 4 worn-out suitcases, a faded backpack, and a cardboard box filled with family photographs nobody else wanted. His own relatives had just erased him from their lives, convinced they were throwing away a failure. Less than 24 hours later, every one of them would stand frozen outside the gates of a breathtaking $30 million mansion, unable to understand how the same man they had humiliated now owned the home they had only ever dreamed of entering. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change someone's life forever, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another inspiring story. Graham Mercer had never imagined that the hardest battle of his life would begin long after losing his wife. 2 years earlier, his wife, Claire, had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Hazel. The grief nearly destroyed him, but every morning he forced himself to smile because Hazel deserved a father who still believed tomorrow could be better. He worked long hours as a maintenance supervisor, skipped meals whenever money was tight, repaired neighbors' appliances for extra income, and quietly sold many of his personal belongings just to keep his daughter in music lessons because Claire had once promised Hazel she would always have a piano to play. When the company Graham had worked for unexpectedly closed, his savings disappeared within weeks. Unable to afford rent, he accepted what seemed like a temporary solution by moving into his late father's old family home, now controlled by his older brother, Preston, and Preston's wife, Vanessa. They insisted they wanted to help, but their kindness came with constant reminders that Graham was a burden. Every breakfast became an opportunity for sarcastic comments about his unemployment. Every dinner included subtle insults disguised as advice. Hazel noticed everything, even when Graham pretended not to hear. Despite applying for dozens of jobs every week, opportunities kept slipping away. Interviews ended with polite smiles and rejection emails. Graham never complained. He continued cooking meals, repairing broken furniture around the house, mowing the lawn, and helping with every chore, hoping gratitude would eventually replace resentment. Instead, Preston became increasingly irritated that Graham wasn't contributing enough financially. Vanessa openly criticized Hazel for taking up space in the guest room, making the little girl apologize for things she had never done wrong. Hazel carried a tiny notebook where she wrote hopeful messages to herself. Every afternoon she would draw little houses with gardens and sunshine, writing underneath them that one day she and her dad would have a happy home again. Graham found those drawings one evening while folding laundry, and although his heart broke, he smiled because his daughter still believed in miracles even when adults had stopped believing. One bright Saturday morning everything changed. Preston announced that the house was being renovated and there was no room for Graham anymore. The excuse sounded rehearsed. Boxes had already been packed before Graham even knew the decision had been made. Family photographs containing Graham and Claire had quietly disappeared from the walls. Their father's old watch, which Graham had always hoped to inherit, had been locked away. Vanessa folded her arms with satisfaction while insisting it was time for Graham to grow up. Graham looked around the living room filled with childhood memories and realized nobody there was seeing him as family anymore. They only saw unpaid bills, inconvenience, and failure. Rather than argue, he simply thanked them for letting him stay as long as they had. His calm response somehow angered them even more. Hazel clutched her father's hand while carrying her little backpack. Before leaving, she carefully placed a handwritten thank you card on the kitchen counter. It simply read that she hoped everyone would always have someone to help them when they needed kindness. Graham never saw Preston read it, but Vanessa quietly rolled her eyes before tossing it toward the trash. Neighbors watched silently as Graham loaded their few belongings into an aging pickup truck borrowed from a friend. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked sympathetic. Graham held his head high because he refused to let Hazel remember her father as someone defeated. They spent the afternoon at a public park while Graham searched through apartment listings on his phone. Prices were impossible. Motels were too expensive for more than a few nights. Hazel sat beside him feeding ducks with pieces of bread from a sandwich they shared. She noticed tears gathering in her father's eyes and gently leaned her head against his shoulder without saying a word. As the afternoon wore on, Graham received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. At first he assumed it was another rejection. Instead, the caller introduced herself as an attorney representing a private investment group connected to Graham's late grandfather, Theodore Mercer. Years earlier, Theodore had quietly invested in a small engineering company that later grew into an international infrastructure giant. Theodore had trusted Graham more than anyone because Graham had spent weekends helping him restore old buildings instead of chasing money. Unknown to the rest of the family, Theodore had completely rewritten his estate shortly before passing away. Rather than leaving everything equally divided, he created a trust that would only transfer ownership after extensive legal reviews were completed. The process had taken years because of international assets, corporate restructuring, and tax settlements. The attorney explained that every legal requirement had finally been completed. Graham was now the sole beneficiary of assets valued at more than $30 million, including a magnificent estate outside the city, investment portfolios, charitable foundations, and several historic properties undergoing restoration. Theodore had left one handwritten instruction explaining that wealth should always belong to the person who understood the value of compassion before the value of money. Graham sat speechless while Hazel stared at him, unsure whether to smile or worry. Tears slowly rolled down his face, not because of the money but because someone had believed in him all along. After ending the call, he hugged Hazel tightly. She asked whether everything was okay, and for the first time in months, Graham answered with complete certainty that everything would be. The next morning, under a brilliant blue sky, a sleek black car arrived to escort Graham and Hazel to their new home. The journey led through tree-lined roads before massive wrought iron gates slowly opened. Beyond them stood an extraordinary stone mansion surrounded by perfectly maintained gardens, sparkling fountains, towering oak trees, and colorful flower beds stretching farther than Hazel could see. Hazel ran across the front lawn laughing with the pure joy only children possess. She wasn't excited because the house was enormous. She was excited because she finally believed they were safe. Graham walked through every room slowly, noticing that the mansion felt warm instead of extravagant. Theodore had filled it with libraries, workshops, restored antiques, photographs, and handwritten journals about serving communities rather than impressing strangers. Inside one study Graham discovered a sealed envelope addressed to him. Theodore explained that success should never become revenge. The people who hurt him would one day need mercy more than judgment. Graham folded the letter carefully and placed it inside his jacket. News travels quickly in every community. By midday Preston and Vanessa learned the unbelievable truth. They refused to believe it until several neighbors confirmed seeing luxury vehicles entering the estate. Curiosity soon overcame pride. That afternoon they drove to the mansion hoping the rumors were exaggerated. Instead, they found themselves standing before breathtaking gates bearing the Mercer family crest. Security politely contacted Graham, asking whether he wished to receive unexpected visitors. For several moments Graham remained silent. Every painful memory resurfaced. Every insult echoed through his mind. Then he remembered Theodore's final letter. He welcomed them inside. Preston entered with forced confidence that quickly disappeared as he realized the estate truly belonged to Graham. Vanessa suddenly behaved as though they had always supported him. They apologized awkwardly, insisting everything had been misunderstood. Graham listened quietly without interrupting. Hazel walked into the room carrying the same notebook filled with hopeful drawings. She had added one more picture that morning. It showed a little house beside a giant one connected by a path with people holding hands. Graham realized his daughter had already forgiven everyone before the adults even considered apologizing. Instead of humiliating his relatives the way they had humiliated him, Graham offered them lunch in the sunny garden overlooking the lake. The meal wasn't lavish. It was simple, fresh, and peaceful. Throughout the afternoon Preston gradually admitted the truth. He confessed that jealousy had poisoned his heart for years because Graham had always been their father's favorite, not because of success but because of his kindness. Losing his job had simply given Preston an excuse to release years of resentment. Vanessa quietly admitted that fear of financial insecurity had turned her into someone she barely recognized. She apologized to Hazel with tears in her eyes, ashamed that a child had shown more grace than she ever had. Graham accepted their apologies, but he also explained that forgiveness did not erase consequences. Trust would have to be rebuilt through honesty, patience, and changed behavior rather than words alone. Preston nodded with genuine understanding. Over the following months Graham transformed Theodore's fortune into opportunities for others. He reopened abandoned vocational workshops, funded scholarships for single parents returning to school, restored neglected community buildings, and created affordable housing projects for struggling families. Instead of buying endless luxury, he invested in second chances because he had once desperately needed one himself. Hazel continued taking piano lessons and often performed free concerts at community centers. She never forgot the afternoons she and her father had shared one sandwich in the park. Whenever children asked why she smiled so much, she simply said that hope sometimes arrives after the hardest goodbye. Preston eventually volunteered at one of Graham's restoration programs. The brothers slowly rebuilt a relationship founded not on inheritance but on humility. Vanessa organized charity events supporting widowed parents and openly spoke about the danger of judging people during their lowest moments. Their transformation wasn't instant, but it was sincere. Years later visitors often admired the magnificent Mercer estate, assuming its greatest treasure was the mansion itself. They never realized the true treasure was the family gathered around its long dining table every sunny weekend, sharing laughter that had once seemed impossible to recover. The greatest victory Graham ever experienced wasn't inheriting $30 million. It was proving that kindness could survive humiliation, that dignity could outlast rejection, and that a loving father could give his daughter a future far richer than wealth alone. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone underestimated you, only for life to surprise everyone in the most unexpected way? Share your thoughts and your story in the comments because your experience might encourage someone who feels hopeless today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, people may close doors on you, families may misunderstand you, and the world may mistake your temporary struggles for permanent failure, but compassion, perseverance, and integrity have a way of opening doors no one else can close. Sometimes the greatest blessing arrives only after the hardest goodbye, and when it does, the richest home is never measured by its price, but by the love, forgiveness, and hope that fill every room.